just answering questions with waptek. Only one person asking me questions today. One of them is about a video I did about various similar designs for cartridges that are used for specifically non-firearms, non-projectile, or non-weapon things that also show up in actual cartridges for real weapons. Fast forward, basically you take the base of a 50 BMG, empty case, reload it, but don't put in the bullet, stick it in a 12-gauge shotgun, fire it with a cork in the end of it so it blast forms it, preferably after you've annealed it before you do any of this, and then cut it off at a certain length so it'll fit into a 2-inch limited shell length, which is actually what they kept doing, and use that for firing anything from a flare to an anti-personnel cartridge. And it's part of my series on weird, large bore, and mostly non-lethal cartridges. Just because it's an extremely specific group of problem-solving activities. It's sort of like a nail gun uses a really small cartridge to drive a nail into steel or cement. So it tells you how powerful the blasted thing could potentially be. Shotgun shells or the like used for firing flares or throwing a line from ship to ship and that sort of thing. Or, firing mace or whatever. And it's part of my evolving pseudo-safe mag-fed double-action pistol design I'm kind of working out because of patents by Heckler and Koch and other methods that all have the same thing. You need to start off with a cartridge that doesn't have a rim that's the same diameter throughout so that it stacks nice and neat, that has a something coming out of it that's smaller than the opening of your cartridge. So that implies that you have to use conventional methods, or you could do oversized to where the bore of the gun and the diameter of the shell is the same for some reason. You don't want to do that. And that would cause it to headspace correctly based on the shell casing and use that to launch a flare or one of those rubber paintball slugs that's exactly 68.5 caliber. 68.5 caliber. And that is inside of normally a bore that's around 73 caliber for your shotgun. So you'd make a pseudo sub-caliber type barrel that would never properly fire a shotgun slug, and you would use this as I say, a non-sporting exemption or exception, self-defense only exemption handgun. Mag-fed because you need more than one shot and it has to be stupid simple so you can just pull the trigger. Well, that's the same method that was used for a flare launcher that is a failed version because it wasn't legally allowed to have a barrel, so they made no barrel. So they made a cartridge that fired itself just like a normal flare does if you get one of those little pull string flares for a ship. But it was underpowered. And if you're not aware of it, yes, even in the movies, it's a dumb idea. But yeah, a flare fired at somebody is an impact weapon at that point. But anyway, double action, basically a magazine that would be filled with the cartridges. You fire it and expend it because you don't have any more. And each magazine would fire the cartridges. That was the idea. They made it into a device where you put the magazine in instead of just making it a throwaway item like you should. And several other designs very similar to this. Also up to and including a full-on 2 3/4 shotgun shell made out of plastic, basically doing that method I described of making just a ginormous mag-fed bullet-based gun. Oddly enough, using the profiles and some of the designs for a 50 BMG. Coinkedinkly, it's just the accent of a 50 BMG, and that was used for a shotgun that's deliberately made extremely expensive, and you can't really reverse engineer it. Well, yeah, you can. You just use the 50 BMG base, make a new cartridge that's that diameter, and severely limit its case capacity to where if you fired a lead slug or tungsten, it would be very lethal. And if you fire anything lighter than tungsten or lead, it won't be. So you could legitimately say this is a self-defense only round if it's non-metallic. That's where that came from. So the person asked, are you doing this to, hunt kaiju? Thank you for saying kaiju. No, it wouldn't work. That would just irritate them. But mini kaiju, Velociraptor, maybe. But again, it would be based on density only. The idea is to have it a very large bore and very lightweight, which seems to work better for impact or blunt force trauma, anti-personnel weapons at very short range. The lighter the projectile, the less range it has, so you don't have the problem of it hitting the next door neighbor and hitting them and hurting them. On the other hand, virtually every bullet, like a .22 short, it's got a 1 mile range where it can actually cause injury and slightly under that for killing somebody. The idea is to make it to where you can't really kill somebody unless they're pretty much on top of you. Or you accidentally or lucky or unlucky shot them in an eye socket or something. So that's what that was based on. So I'm answering that question in this video, and that's 5 minutes of my life and yours, hopefully not wasted. But it's part of my weird, large bore, and mostly non-lethal videos and proposals for doing this, because we have a self-defense exemption only for firing a weapon and ending up killing somebody. Only self-defense. But we have, the only way you can get a gun in the United States to be legally acceptable over .50 caliber is if it's for sporting usage, not for self-defense. And in France, ordinary citizens with a permit can get a hold of a 12-gauge flare gun that's made of metal, so it's just a 12-gauge handgun, and use it for self-defense only. I don't like our country having fewer freedoms than French. Well, let's move on. This person also posted the comment that the symbol that's used for the "Would you like to join the Legion," the symbol that they use, if they are even a they anymore, doesn't have any basis I could find. But the person made a proposal or a comment that was associated with various things you can read below in the description here. Now, the next thing the person has said is, after I pointed out I couldn't find this symbol associated with any of the words, or I didn't mention, but translations in other languages I couldn't find it under. It simply doesn't exist, as what the person's saying, as a warning in mining for a gas-filled shaft, or some ancient named thing like Jormungandr or whatever. So the person brought up some other ones, and I'll read them. Spellstav, Galderstafi, which apparently is a misspelling on this person's part, but I don't know, and Natherver, I can't pronounce it. These are symbols for, supposedly, the world serpent. The other one was the, what was it called? The, I'm not finding it. Yeah, the Grand Forge of the Dwarves symbol in Catalog of the Dwarves by Lee M. Hollander. Coincidentally, if you try to look it up and see any of the images in it, it doesn't show up because it's supposed to have symbols that match this. And then the person says, my sources are mixed derivation for the symbol. I have photos of the rune within a book in my possession, which I will gladly send you if you give me your email address or post them someplace. This is the internet. That should have already happened on your part. But the point is that the reason waptek did not find anything pertaining to this symbol is that it has no set symbol for the entity itself or its meaning. Now, if you're not aware of this, any geometrically derived symbol, a circle with two slashes, one of them offset from the other so that it does this through the circle in the middle, which is what we're talking about, any symbol you can come up with is derived very simply. You start off with, let's say, a line, up and down or right to left. One of those is the starting point, and a circle, and sometimes you'll find a square, triangles, that sort of thing. And you can draw a square to where it's tilted like this. You can draw a triangle to where it's tilted this way, or pointing left or right. These symbols are used because they're visually distinct, and they're easily drawn, and they're the thing that happens when people just literally sit down and fiddle around with a stick, swiping at the ground, left, right, up, down, coming up with a standard. It's a slightly escalating level of dexterity to do a line that's straight up and down or straight left to right, rather than slashing at slightly different angles each time. You'll come up with an X, a plus, equal symbols, single line, 45-degree angle variations. And because it's visually easier to just see this versus this, you don't see something usually in the middle very often. That's usually a sign that someone's needing to communicate a very specific and precise thing. You can look this up through language study. This person, however, is interested in esoteric symbology and that sort of thing, which I have that brings up the hackles on my neck from all the people misinterpreting these things, and I'm sure this person would agree. And also, if you're not aware of the Grand Forge of the Dwarves, and etc., some of this is strongly associated with Tolkien fans. Not that I know anything about it. And you're going to find symbology like this used for all sorts of visual media and written media. They'll describe a symbol. In fact, if you take what I say, get the text translation, you might be able to get a text representation of me describing something visual this way. And that's the next stage. Once we came up with symbols that we could use to communicate sounds of our voice phonetically, or symbology for meaning, which is actually earlier than phonetic, you find that people describe symbols and then include them in master copies of information so that they can come up with these symbologies. I want to bring up the omega symbol, not the alpha and all the other symbology people have assigned to this. The omega symbol is used in electronics and various other fields, but in electronics it's used for the symbol for resistance, a physical property of materials where electricity going through it will produce heat. Unless it's a superconductor, it will produce heat or it will react in some way. This is for linear reaction only, otherwise it's impedance. And these linear reactions are symbolically listed as a value we've decided to create from a long time ago called ohms. Ohm. Everybody has to do the joke. Welcome to the cult of Omega, or the ohms. And the simple idea is that if you run 1 amp of current through something and it's 1 volt on each end of that object, that has a 1 ohm resistance. If it allows a tenth of an amp at 1 volt, then it's 10 ohms. That's how the math works. And yes, someone's going to try to correct me below somehow. And I may have actually made a mistake because it's easy to get this mixed up. But the symbol for it is what we're going to talk about. It's a circle or a slightly ovalized circle where it's taller than it is skinny, and then the bottom is knocked off and 2 curves are put out to a somewhat flat line. There are hundreds of variations of this because it was an original cursive written thing. It became standardized when people used a stamp or decided to make a formal standard for it. But there's hundreds of variations of it. And it's a reasonably sophisticated symbol compared to just doing a circle or a circle slash like we're talking about. In the next case, again, the would you like to join the Legion is circle slash with the slashes offset like a printing error. Now I want to point out something specific about that symbol from the would you like to join the Legion and also Omega. Variations on the ohms symbol are actually under copyright because someone decided to make a copyrightable or trademark version of Omega and had a huge fight with that because they had to come up with some specific characteristic that was visually obvious, distinctive, but still reminded people of the ohms symbol. So now we have this circle slash, and that's what it is, with the lower line of an unfilled slash pulled up and the other one pulled down, or the other variation. I tried all the variations, couldn't find the symbol. So the person's saying, what I'm attributing it to has no standard to it, versus this symbol that's distinct enough that when I tried to see if it's already been copywritten or used, I couldn't find it. I'm pretty good at finding out if something's been copyrighted, patented, or used ever. This strongly suggests someone came up with a symbol and absolutely came up with something that could carry a copyright status, and therefore copyright striking. And it's distinctive enough that I should be able to find it use at all. And what I find is people using it only for would you like to join the Legion. This incredibly specific set of circumstances screams at the top of my lungs that someone managed to make a symbol that's actually new, or at least as new as you can possibly do. It's just a circle with a line going through it, but it's got the 2 lines offset, and that makes it into something that is distinctive. And I would be absolutely dumbfounded if somebody did not apply for a copyright to it or a trademark symbol to it. And that really does bring to mind that this is probably some sort of ARG or some joke. It could have also been a graphics designer who decided to make a very unique symbol and then discard their control over it by making it part of this project to promote themselves. We're probably going to get a gotcha style reveal at the end. Do I believe that this is symbolic of anything from Norse mythology or ever used in a mine shaft? Absolutely, I do not. Am I criticizing this person for not posting, what book did you get it from? I'm sure he's referring to this specific book, but maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he has a copy of something he hasn't bothered looking at in a while. But he says he has a book with a symbol in it. He could take the image or just draw it and tell us what book it is so we can confirm it. We need to know when the book was copyrighted or written, preferably both, by who, where it was from, what language it's in, because it may be in alternate languages, and where we can find a copy on Amazon or whatever. That's about it. By the way, I'm not going to do a live stream. I'm going to be doing a live fight. If you want to look around on some of the cartridge articles in Wikipedia, watching me fix things someone deliberately sabotaged, trying to cause people to cause explosions in their guns. That was literally what they found out the guy was doing. Yes, somebody's going around on Wikipedia and posting inaccurate information about firearms, trying to create accidents. That's fucking Wikipedia activists at its worst. I'll be going after them for the rest of the week because they've left a trail of destruction using multiple sock puppet accounts, and only Wikipedia could figure out how to fix this or unfuck it. Yeah, the revert function. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And if anybody knows where this symbol really came from, please post actual sources.